Okay, so here in the Google Classroom under the personal logo, we've got the presentation here, Logo Design Basics, and we're filling out the logo worksheet here. So as I go through the presentation, I'll help you guys to fill out this worksheet along the way. So, Logo Design Basics. Logos are an important part of our world. They're symbols that represent brands or organizations and are designed to be easily recognizable. They can be made up of just text, which would be a logo type, or just a graphic, which would be a logo mark, or it could be a mixture of the two. And then here's some recognizable examples. So this one is mostly words, right? So that would be a logo type. An easy way to remember that is because there's type written in that type of logo. It's a logo type. Versus this one is just a swoosh mark. It's just a graphic. So that one would be a logo mark. There's no text. It's just a graphic. And then you can have a mixture of both. So this one is very graphic, but there's also some A in there. So it's some type and some graphics. So it is an example of a mixture of both of those. So here in our worksheet, what kind of a logo is a logo type? What kind of a logo is a logo mark? And then when we look over here on the examples, between this one and this one, which one is the logo type and which one is the logo mark? And you'll click and drag that picture over the correct box over here. So, this is an introduction to graphic design with a focus on the fundamentals of logo design. You're going to become familiar with the objectives and needs of a client, which you guys are going to be your own clients for this project, and develop a logo design based on those goals. So each of you are going to create your own logo that you can use as like a way of signing future class projects, a way of putting your mark on things. So let's start with going way back to the beginning of graphic design. Graphic design is the practice or profession of creating print or electronic forms of visual information for areas such as publications, advertisements, packaging, or websites. It began in the 19th century, and many consider this William Morris to be the father of modern graphic designs. In the second half of the 19th century, his Kelmscott Press produced many of the graphic designs and created a collector's mark for this kind of art. In Oxford, he was associated with the artists like Morris, Burne-Jones, and Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Together they formed the Pre-Raphaelites group, which their ideas influenced the modern graphic design considerably. So again, back on our worksheet here, who was the father of modern graphics? It says right here, his name was William Morris. And then find the picture that is the example of his work and pull it into this box here. So make sure you're filling out that worksheet as we go. So here we can see some examples of his work. This is really old, like 1800s, so that's why it probably doesn't look like graphic design to us. It maybe just looks like more decorative, fancy drawings. But back in a time when they didn't have the internet or things like that, this was what their graphics looked like. Their prints of publications, their books, would have like these fancy first letters in the books and decorations around them. I think of like monks that would like draw in books. But here, William Morris and his friends figured out how to specialize that and do it in the printing press. So here they did it on a fabric. This is a graphic or decorative design. The first page of a book of poetry. So another really important thing we've talked a little bit about is types of fonts. There are serif fonts and there are sans serif fonts. Serif fonts are fonts that have those little semi-structural details on the ends of the strokes that make up the letters and symbols. It's a typeface or a font. A typeface that has a serif is called a serif typeface. For example, Times New Roman. So if you look closely at the T on Times New Roman, you can see how it has like these little flags that come down, and at the foot there's like these little feet that come out to the side. Those are the decorative semi-structural details they're talking about. When a font has that, then it is a serif font. Serif fonts are thought to have originated in the Roman alphabet with the inscriptional lettering, words carved into the stone in Roman antiquity. So the idea is that they would go through and paint the words on the stone, a painter would, and then a carver would come behind and carve the words into the stone. But the painter would paint so fast that his brush strokes would have little wispy ends on the end of them, and the guy who was carving probably couldn't read and didn't know that that wasn't intentional, and so he would carve that part into the stone thinking that was a part of the letter, even though it wasn't intentionally put there. It was just like the paintbrush stroke wisp from the painter being really fast. And so that became a style. It became the serif style, the extra little brush mark flare at the end. So these are some examples of some serif fonts. They've got these little flags and extra lines and details on them. A sans serif font, sans is Latin for without, so it means without the little decorative features, without the flags, okay? So sans serif is a typeface that does not have the small features. It began in the 5th century. We can see the letters in Latin, Etruscan, and Greek inscriptions, and on through. So if we look at our worksheet, what is the definition of a serif font? What is the definition of a sans serif font? And there's two pictures here that show one is serif and one is sans serif. Click and drag them in the right box, whichever one they go to. Sorry, these are some examples. This one is the serif. It's got the decorative flag. These ones are sans serifs. You can see that they're much simpler. They don't have this huge wispy mark over here to the side. The G line isn't all connected. So that's a way of comparing them. Often in graphic design, it looks nice to pair a serif and a sans serif together on like a poster or something. And there's certain times that one or the other is better for readability or headlines, and we'll look at more of that later. So back to logos. A logo is a name, symbol, or trademark designed for easy recognition. You guys are actually logo experts and you don't even realize it. You have in your memory bank thousands of remembered logos for different companies that you just see and recognize and don't even think twice about, but you guys know them all. It began in the 13th century, where trademarks for merchants, blacksmiths, and masons. And then in the 19th century, when the industrial manufacturing came through, they started producing stuff at a higher rate, and so they started making more logos then. There's too many logos for us to know all the ones that we recognize. So on here, what are some that pop out to you that you know automatically? Pepsi, Domino's, which one? Black & Decker. So a good logo should be unique, reproducible in like different sizes or like color in black and white. It should follow the basic principles of space, color, form, clarity. It should represent the company appropriately, and it should speak to that target audience. So Prudential Financial is going to have a really different target audience than NTV is. So the way those look is going to be specific to their target audience. The golden rule of logo design is that a logo should clearly represent an organization's identity and to keep it simple. That is the first thing that people always mess up with this personal logo design, is that they try to fit all the symbols and ideas of who they are into their one picture, and it's just way too busy. Good logos are very simple. It should be effective at a large and small scale, and it should be effective in color and black and white. So let's just double check here. What is a logo? I put it there. Why do we want them to be simple? And then when we're done going through this presentation, then you can find a picture for here. And we're about to go over why we want it to be scalable and why we want it to be effective in color or black and white. And you can find examples of those in a minute. Okay. So, this is a really cool evolution of the Apple logo. So this is the original first one from a long time ago. You can see it's very detailed. There's shading, there's banners. It's really not very readable, honestly. And then it evolved into this one. This is the one of my youth. I remember it being the color stripes here on the Apple. And then since then, this is the one that you guys probably recognize as the Apple logo. It's very clean and simple, kind of digital looking. What? It's crazy how much it's changed, right? Right? Okay, logos should be good at a small scale and a large scale. So of these two, which one is the most effective at both scales? Why is Target more effective? It's simple. The red makes it pop out. What makes the Rockies one not as effective at the small scale? It's ugly. Let's be more specific.
I don't like it. It's hard to see what it is.
It's hard to tell what it is at the small scale, right? It's hard to read it and see, like, that it's a baseball and a mountain. You can't even read the Colorado on it. So making sure that they're effective both at small and large scales is important. You know, your logo might be on a business card, or it might be on a billboard. You want it to be effective in any place that you put it at. A logo should also be effective in color or black and white. There's not always going to be a time when you're going to have access to color for printing your logo. You know, maybe you're printing on a t-shirt and you only have one color to screen print with, and it's black. So what would your logo look like if it was just in black and white? Or maybe you're sending it in a fax, and the fax machines don't print in color. So what would it look in black and white? I know, you barely know what a fax is. So whatever you do, it needs to be effective both ways. You know, if it wasn't clear in black and white, then it wouldn't be a good logo. If you had to have the color in order to tell what it wouldn't be a good logo. So logos can be descriptive and symbolic. This is an example of a descriptive logo. When we look at it, what do we see? What do you think that organization specializes in? See a key? And the skyline, right? So those two things together symbolize access. The key is kind of like a symbol for access, and the skyline represents architecture. So that's kind of the idea behind the Center for Architecture. That's why that's their logo. So of these ones, how do they describe their